Oh, yeah, it is showtime here on IdahoSports.com. Welcome into this special edition of the IdahoSports.com Prepcast, our live 2021 state baseball tournament preview. We've got, almost all of the play-by-play broadcasters that will be broadcasting starting tomorrow. I can't even believe it. State baseball is here. I'm Brandon Baney. I'll be broadcasting the State 1A tournament in Orofino. If you're watching the video live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, directly to my right is Scott Burton, the Magic Man in the Magic Valley. You're doing the 4A tournament. Scott, how you doing?
Doing very well. We're just hoping the weather holds up down here.
Yes, of course. All right. And then to the bottom, directly below me, I feel like we're on the Brady Bunch, guys. I'm going to look
Can I be the lovely lady?
Directly below me is Lorin Jensen. Of course, Lorin was with me last night as we previewed the state softball tournaments. Lorin is going to have a preview of the 2A tournament in Pocatello. Lorin, 2 days in a row, I get to see your face. What a pleasure.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine, I'm sure, Brandon. So thanks for having me here.
All right, enough with the pleasantries. The guy directly below Scott here on the video stream, this was kind of like when David Lee Roth announced he was rejoining Van Halen. This was big news. Gary Jones back with us on IdahoSports.com. Gary, so good to see you.
Hey, I just got to tell you, with that COVID year we had, I took a year off of Idaho Sports. I felt terrible doing it. And I miss you guys. I love you guys. I miss the job. I miss the kids. I miss the game. It is so nice to be back.
Yeah, well, we certainly missed you as well, Gary. And let's see if we can bring him in, our fifth play-by-play broadcaster, broadcasting from who knows where, Mike Safford, broadcasting the 5A state tournament this year for us. Mike, how are you?
He's frozen.
Your silence speaks volumes, Mike. All right, we're gonna patch. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no. All right. And this is why it's so fun, everybody, because it's live. We are live video streaming on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm just going to remove Mike for a second until he gets unfrozen. And so, again, we're doing this live. If you want to give a shout out to your favorite athlete, your favorite player, your favorite coach, how about your favorite broadcaster? I think Gary would win that in a landslide. But just give anybody a shout out, put it in the comments. We'll put it up on the screen and make sure your favorite team or player or coach is acknowledged. So I was going to start with the 5As because that's the way we typically do these things. But with Mike having some technical difficulties, I guess we could probably start the other way, guys. You guys all right with that? We start 1A and work our way up?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm doing the state 1A tournament, so this is going to be pretty easy right off the bat. Here's a look at the bracket. Now, the 1A is a little bit different than your traditional 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A because there's only 6 teams competing, and there's only 2 districts total in 1A baseball. So the 2 district champions, Genesee from the north and North Star from District 3 in the western Idaho, they get first-round byes, so they only have to win 2 games to win state. Everybody else has to win 3. And up first in our first matchup, and this tournament doesn't start till Friday either, and this is in Orofino because there's only 6 teams. So the first matchup is Glens Ferry against Prairie, and then you've got Kamiah going up against Horseshoe Bend. Now, the White Pine League or District 2 was like absolutely bananas. You ended up in the district championship with the number 5 seed Genesee playing the number 6 seed Kamiah. Everybody saw that coming in, right? I mean, what a wild and unpredictable district tournament that was. In fact, heading into the final day of the regular season, there was a 3-way tie for first place between Prairie and Kendrick and Troy. And Prairie is the only team that survived districts to get to state, and they'll have to do it the hard way after finishing 3rd. But I think if you look at that bracket again, and as we pull it up, I think Prairie is actually set up really well. They're on the opposite side of the bracket from North Star, which is the overwhelming favorite coming in. North Star is 14-1 on the season. But Prairie, is no slouch either. They have the second best record at 12-5. And so I think they just got into some bad luck at districts. So I think Prairie, has a tough first round matchup with the Glens Ferry team that's coming off a second place finish at districts. But I think for the Pirates, traditionally a pretty strong baseball program, I think they've got a great chance. Talking to their head coach, Kyle Westhoff, last night, he said, really it benefits us having the tournament in North Idaho in Orofino because in the history of Prairie football and baseball, we have never won a state championship outside of North Idaho. So being at home, he feels like is going to give his team a big advantage. But the conversation starts and ends with North Star first-year baseball program, believe it or not. Yes, their head coach, Simon Mahler, lives in Eagle, has 2 young sons, and as he started to research the different high schools in his area that play baseball, he discovered that really there aren't a ton. And a lot of baseball players get cut at those 5A and 4A schools because so many kids try out and there's only X amount of spots. And he said, well, there should be options. You know, my kids, when they get to high school, are probably never going to make it if 40 to 50 kids are getting cut per school. So he said, I went to North Star Charter and asked, do you guys play baseball? They said no. He said, well, let's fix that. Let's get a program going. It was a couple of years in the making. And last year actually was supposed to be their first year, but it was delayed because of COVID-19, of course. And now here in their debut season, 14-1. Their only loss was to Coal Valley Christian, a 2A school. They went 10-0 in their district. The run differential is like bonkers. They have scored 249 runs this year. They've only allowed 45. That's a run differential of 204 runs. And he's, Coach Mahler said, we've got all these lopsided scores, but we don't feel good about that. I mean, they get to a point in the game where they start trying to, if they hit a gapper, they stop at first base. We stop stealing bases. We shut it down. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how North Star, they kind of ran through District 3, how they do with those teams up north. I think on the bottom side of the bracket, that's where North Star is. Cami has to take on Horseshoe Bend right off the bat. Cami came in as the number 6 seed. They actually have a sub 500 record. They're 9-11 overall, and their run differential is 1, literally 1. They've scored 141 runs. They've given up 140. So that's about as even Steven as you can be for Cami. So, there's some teams that probably weren't expected to be here, like Cami, and, Glens Ferry is 9-17, but 10 of those 17 losses came to 2A competition. So it's a good mix. It's North Star's tournament, I think, to lose, certainly, but I think Prairie has a great shot. And like we saw at districts, especially in District 2, anybody can get on a hot streak. The big thing is going to be the pitchers. Those teams that have to play 3 games, do they have enough pitching to withstand that? For North Star and Genesee, only having 2 games, it makes it a little bit easier on the pitching staff. So that's kind of the 1A breakdown. Do you guys have anything to add to that, or?
I'm just jealous that you get to go up to Orofino. That field is phenomenal. When I was in high school, I got to play in the state tournament there in Orofino, and it is it's not the greatest facility, but the field and the backdrop, the mountains and the river down there, it's gorgeous. I could spend all day just sitting there watching baseball at that field. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. As we mentioned, this is a live stream. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel. If you want to give your favorite player or coach or broadcaster a shout out, do so in the comments. We'll put it up on the screen right away. Some guy named Paul Kingsbury. My favorite broadcaster is part of this preview show. Way to take the coward stance there, Paul. We can play a fun guessing game and decide who he's talking about. Also,
we all know he's talking about Scott.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay, so Lorin, you mentioned the 1A tournament's going to be in Orofino. Brian says home of the Maniacs. That's right. And such a beautiful stadium with the river running behind it. I'm very excited. This will be my first time being in Orofino at their baseball facilities. I think it's going to be outstanding. Orofino plays in the 2A classification, as does Grangeville. Let's go Grangeville Bulldogs. And how about let's go Dragons, the Malad Dragons, Lorin. This is going to be a really fun 2A tournament, I think, if we pull up the bracket here. What do you see right off the bat?
Well, you start looking at the top half. I think Nampa Christian comes in, has got to be the favorite. They're undefeated. They're 25-0 overall, 10-0. Head coach Mark Harris, he's an institution there at Nampa Christian. He's been coaching. I was talking to Gary. Gary was the head coach at New Plymouth, starting in like 85. And Gary remembers Mark Harris coaching then at Nampa Christian, and I remember him as a player there when I played at New Plymouth. And so, that guy is an institution. They've had a ton of success, and so Nampa Christian on that top half of that bracket, they're the team to beat. They're going up against Bear Lake, who's under 500. They're 7-14. That's going to be a tough game for Bear Lake. Firth and Declo, I think it's a really evenly matched game. Both district champions, Firth out of 6th district, Declo out of the 4th. And so I think that game's kind of a toss-up. I got to give a shout-out to Rigo Vasquez, the head coach at Firth. Know him from refereeing basketball and a few other things. But, Nampa Christian, kind of the team to beat there on that top half, and probably the overall favorite. And right there, we got that going for an 11th title. We had 4 in a row back from like 15 to 18, and that's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
If I can think about Mark Harris, if I can interject him about Mark Harris when I first joined him, when we first started coaching in 84, 85, something like that, and he was there. I always circled them for a win because when he started, they weren't very good. You pretty much had a 10-run rule against them, and but that ended so quickly. After a couple of years, that nonsense was over, and you didn't circle them for a win. You circled them you knew you were in for a game. Mark Harris turned that program around, and he has never looked back.
Yeah, I think, Nampa Christian definitely looks pretty solid, but I don't know. There might be a team or two lying in the weeds. Who else really stands out to you, Lorin, if we look at this?
Well, you've got Grangeville there, and Grangeville, they're 21-4, 6-0 in conference, and Malad. Those are the two on the bottom of the bracket that really stood out to me. Malad's had a phenomenal season, 19-3 overall. Their run differential's really good. They're scoring 10 runs a game and only giving up about 2.5. Grangeville, again, they're scoring 12 runs a game, only giving up 4. And so, down there in the bottom, the Grangeville and Malad are the two favorites, in my opinion, on the bottom half of the bracket. Wouldn't be surprised to see them meet up. Melva, Melva is a young team. I heard from their head coach. They're kind of young, but they made their way through, and they're 15-8 overall, 7-2 in conference. Got to assume at least those 2 losses are probably to Nampa Christian. And so, they could give Grangeville a little run for their money as well. And then, of course, you got Orofino, the Maniacs, best mascot probably in the country. But 14-7 overall, 4-3 in conference. They're trying to make a statement for themselves as well, coming in as the B seed behind Grangeville. So yeah, it's wide open, but you got to look at Nampa Christian as the prohibitive favorite in the tournament upcoming. I think, the defending state champion in the 2A ranks is Melva back in 2019 because of the missed season last year. But so don't count them out. There might be a couple of kids still hanging on that team from Melva that remember that experience. And who did they play? They played Declo in that state championship game. So a lot of these teams are holdovers from a couple of years ago that were in the tournament as well, and so they're all vying for that trophy and that title.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting tournament for sure. 2 anecdotes about the 2A ranks and some of the teams that are there. Grangeville, in their season opener this year, it was a doubleheader. In the first game, Blake Shue, it was either the first or second game, but in one game he basically pitched a no-hitter, and then in the second game he hit a grand slam and had like 5 or 6 RBIs, which is just like crazy. And then Malad this year was playing Layton Christian Academy in Utah, and it was kind of an overmatched team. And their coach, Bo Clark, told me that we wanted to save our good pitchers for later in the week against tougher competition. So they took a kid, Peyton Briggs. He hadn't pitched all season, and I believe he hadn't pitched at all in his high school career. And Briggs asked him, "Hey, can I start on the mound?" He said, "Sure, why not?" He goes out and throws a no-hitter in his first game ever. So that was pretty cool from Malad as well.
Yeah, and just to highlight a few people for Declo as well, I was looking at their batting averages on some of their statistics. They've got 6 guys batting over 300, and they've got 3 of those guys batting over 400. Derek Matthews is batting 438. They've got Dalton Powell at 500, and then Gabe Matthews, he's batting 703. That's phenomenal at any level. Even if it is high school, I mean, he's just been dominant at the plate. They've got some good hitters, and so no matter who they come up against, pitching is going to have to be careful if they don't want to give up a lot of runs.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Nampa Christian, we think the favorite there in the 2A ranks. Let's transition to 3A, And here's a shout out, Isaac Bowman, Marsh Valley, keeping an eye out, which Gary is probably a good place to start. They're the defending champs, and they have just blown through the competition this year. But what do you see, Gary, when you look at this 3A bracket?
Yeah, the one that jumps out to you is Marsh Valley because they're 24-0 overall, and they have a small league, so they're only 4-0 in league, but they haven't lost a game all year. And the second best team record-wise would be Kimberly. It's interesting. They're 18-3-1. Yeah, they had a tie ball game. I don't know the story about it, but I've never heard of a tie ball game in all my years in Idaho and baseball, but apparently they did. They were 9-0 in league too. But here's the one thing, and when I coached, I would always tell my players, I don't care who the number one team is going into a state tournament if I'm in the tournament and I'm not the number one team, because how many times in the NBA, the Major League, or NFL does the number one team from the season win the Super Bowl or the World Series? I'm willing to bet it's maybe 50% of the time in major leagues. And I would always tell my kids, you don't have the best record in the league in a tournament, but all you have to do is win 3 games in a row. It's all you have to do is win 3 games. It doesn't matter whether they're a 24-0 team or a 1-12 team. Just win 3 games in a row, and you're the best team in state. And so, to me, I think there's always a lot of pressure on an undefeated team like Marsh Valley, because if they lose 1 game and they're 24-1, they're not going to be a state champion, and it's hard. And so, you just got to take every game one by one, especially in baseball, when your best pitcher might not be on the mound. And so, to me, in all these divisions, everybody has a chance at state because it's only a 3-game tournament. So nobody should hang their head going in and think, oh, we can't beat Marsh Valley. Well, maybe you can. Like I said, all you have to do is win 3 games and you're the best team in the state.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, Gary, because you've seen a lot of baseball, and it's kind of a roll of the dice when you're a coach and you have to win those 3 games. Do you throw your best pitcher right away and win the game right in front of you, or do you go with the strategy of trying to save your best arms for down the road, knowing that you may not get there? It's kind of a gamble, but what do you think in terms of strategy with pitchers?
It's funny you should ask me this question because I'll go back to my district records. I only won 1 district. I won league a few times. So I went to state 3 times and won it in 94. But my district record wasn't great. And that's because of what you just said. Sometimes I rested my best pitcher, hoping I'd play him in the second game. Lost the first game in district. And in baseball district back in the 80s and 90s was single elimination. After 3 months of play, if you lost 1 game in district, you were done. And the worst year ever, I won league, played Napa Christian. I played him the day before district, and we beat Napa Christian by like 18 runs. Played them the next day, and they beat us by 1, and we were done. So I struggled with that decision so much. I don't really have an answer for you, but I know one thing. After that year, I stopped saving my pitcher. So,
okay.
That's a very complex question because it's 2020. Hindsight's always going to kill you. If you make the wrong decision. If you start your best pitcher and he loses, then you're done. If you don't and you lose, you think, hey, why didn't I start my best pitcher? So that probably was the hardest decision for me as a baseball coach.
Sure. We're getting some more comments here on the live stream. Paul Kingsbury having some fun again with us. Non-sports related question. Is it a rule for broadcasters that as they get older, they hang more things on their walls?
Yeah.
And then Brian says, that's something I noticed. The 2 older guys have a lot of stuff on their walls. That's his words, not mine, guys. That's not my words. That's Brian's words.
We've got all life experiences, right, Gary? The stories to tell.
It's either that or overcompensation, something. I don't know.
Right.
The other thing about the 3A tournament is that Idaho seeds their state tournament off district. And sometimes it creates unequal matchups in terms of seeding. And the classic one is Fruitland, which has won since 2009 has won 1, 2, 6. Fremont has a great history, and they were undefeated in league, 10-0. Well, Homedale snuck in to state as the number 1 seed because they upset Fruitland in the district championship game. And they were only 6-4 in league. They were in 3rd place. So they were the 3rd seed out of league, yet they're the number 1 seed out of district. And so, for somebody like Kimberly was first. They thought they'd get, a 2 or a 3 seed. No, they got Fruitland. I know they're not the number 1 seed from district, but they're the number 1 seed from the WIC or from the Snake River Conference. Surely they got upset by Homedale. So sometimes you have to deal with that seeding the way Idaho does it. It may seem a little unfair to Kimberly, but that's just the roll of the dice. You got to deal with it, and you got to try to win that game.
Yeah, like Brian Hall says, Kimberly and Marsh Valley in the same part of the bracket should be the title game, and instead it might be a potential semifinal. Also, a shout out to the South Fremont Cougars. Christopher Glasscock says, South Fremont is a threat. I have to agree. South Fremont comes from a small district, but they've got a great coach in Chad Hall. They beat Sugar Salem in their best of 3-game series, and they I don't know, they're kind of just solid and steady. They're not super flashy or anything, but South Fremont on the top part of the bracket looks pretty good too, Gary.
19-6 overall and 4-0 in league. Yeah, they're the real deal. And like I said, too, again, wipe the records off. This is a 3-game World Series to win it all. And a lot of times records don't mean anything. They mean you're a good team, but good teams can lose. And so there's always upsets in state because there's a lot of pressure on these kids and they're just teenagers. Sometimes it's the first time at state, and nerves, definitely. I could tell you, when I won state, I was the most nervous guy in the field. That was the most nerve-wracking game of my life because I knew I was supposed to win. I was playing Homedale for the 4th time. We'd beaten him 3 times. And I kept fearing I'm going to lose 1 out of 4 to Homedale, and I'm not going to be a state champ. Neither will my kids. So I was incredibly nervous in that game. I don't know how nervous my kids were, but I remember the third base coach during the game, he asked me, the third base umpire said, Coach, you don't look like you're having much fun. It looks like you're really not having fun. And I looked at him, I said, I'm really not. I go, you can tell. And then I thought, boy, I hope my kids don't know. But when the last hour was recorded, I literally was the happiest guy on the planet. I was jumping around, hugging everybody. But there is a lot of pressure at state, and that's why sometimes records can be meaningless. The teams that play the best play under pressure and do those things you have to do to win, which in baseball is put the ball in play and don't walk. If you're a pitcher, there's no defense for walks. And if you do the right things, you can beat anybody at any given day.
Yeah.
And Brandon, back in 2019, I got to call the 3A state tournament, and South Fremont was there. Head coach Chad Hill, he's been there for a long time. Heavily involved in all the programs there at South Fremont, and they just came up against a buzzsaw in Marsh Valley. But they've got a phenomenal team. They've got good athletes. They've got another shot this year, and I'm sure they want a little redemption against Marsh Valley. And just as a side note, last team to beat Marsh Valley, that was Filer way back in 2019. So that it's been a long time. Granted they didn't play last, but it's been a long time since they've lost a game.
Yeah, well, and Marsh Valley, of course, won the boys basketball championship earlier this winter. Kent Howell coaches basketball and baseball at Marsh Valley, so he's been a busy guy in terms of postseason runs. Let's take a look at the 4A bracket now, Scott. As we look here, Colombia against Pocatello, Canyon Ridge against Ridgeview, Bishop Kelly and Sandpoint, and then Twin Falls and Bonneville. This tournament will take place at the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls. What stands out to you, Scott?
Well, what stands out to me is that in the final coaches poll, only 2 teams that were in the top 5 made the tournament. And that's the number 1 Twin Falls Bruins and the number 2 ranked Bishop Kelly Knights. And as fate would have it, they're on the same side of the bracket.
Yeah.
So you can bet this 4A bracket is going to raise a lot of questions, especially if things start to go chalk. Because you had so many upsets in district tournaments coming into this 4A tournament. And just to piggyback a little bit off of what Gary said, it really isn't so much about the records. It's about who's getting hot at the right time. And so you've got 6 of these teams, not saying that these 6 don't deserve to be here because they definitely do, but you have really 6 hot teams coming in versus the 2 teams that have been nails up and down the schedule all season long. And so it's going to clash and something is going to give. So let's take a look at the top of the bracket. We open the tournament with Colombia and Pocatello. Now, Colombia, they were the number 4 seed going into their district tournament. And they came out with a state berth as the 3C team, sporting a record of 13-11. But this is a team that started 0-5. And they started 0-5 and were outscored 36-6 to start the season. So it took them a little bit to find their stride, and they won the play-in game against Hillcrest convincingly 9-1. But the thing about Columbia is they do have something that Pocatello is going to have to pay attention to. This is a team that is young. They've only they rely on 2 sophomore pitchers. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is a team that does not strike out very often. They put the bat on the ball. Now, one of their weaknesses is power and speed, but this is a contact hitting team. And so if you get into those situations to where, a defensive team is a little bit nervous, a little bit amped up, whatever, and start making mistakes, Columbia is a team that will make you pay because they're not going to give you a whole lot of free outs. They're going to make you earn it. Now, they do have 2 sophomore pitchers that they rely on quite heavily, Mario De Leon, who's a lefty, and Caden Campa, who's the righty, and they both have got under 2 ERAs, 1.8, and then you've got senior right-hander Ethan. I'm going to screw the name up. Deja Como. So forgive me on that one, with a 1.2 ERA. So this is a team that is, I don't know, it's really interesting to see what they do. They're going to make you earn it, but let's talk about Pocatello, the team they're going to play. Poke comes in with almost an identical record of 13-10. They won the 5A. Hey, welcome back.
Hey, Mike. Can you hear us? Okay. Okay. Anyways, continue, Scott. We'll get to Mike in the 5A preview here in just a moment, but breaking down that Pocatello-Columbia matchup in the 4A.
Yeah, and Pocatello comes in with a record of 13-10, and they can score some runs. They're averaging almost 7 runs a game. And so this is a team that lost 9 games. 9 of their 10 games were against 3 opponents, Century, Preston, and Skyline. But here's the thing about that, and if you want to talk about competition, Century, Preston, and Skyline together combined 32-46. So the question is, what kind of competition has Pocatello seen? Because now they're going to go into the top 8 teams that have qualified for this state tournament, and that's going to be the one thing. They're a young team, 1 senior. Have they seen the competition that's going to allow them to advance in the state tournament? So there's the interesting part of the opening game. And then we hit Canyon Ridge and Ridgeview, the Battle of the Ridge, I guess, however you want to say that. Canyon Ridge comes in as the 4B seed, 19-9. That's the most wins in school history for Canyon Ridge, their very first trip to state. But the interesting thing here is that they have all of the ingredients to do well. They have 3 really good arms. Ian Hughes, Stephen Garrett Lagrone, and Colton Price. All these kids can throw the baseball, and they swing it. So when you've got that combination of 3 solid arms, you can hit the baseball. And how is the experience now? First trip here, that's going to play a part. And so, you look at those 2 pitchers that I talked about, Hughes and Garrett Lagrone, they are both committed to Columbia Basin to play college. And they both throw in the low to mid 80s. One of them's got a nice cutter to complement. And so this is a team, like I said, that has some pieces in place. But they had 1 4-game losing streak. And other than that, they've been really, really consistent. And one thing that you're going to have with Canyon Ridge is to celebrate their trip to state. I hope Mike hasn't crashed his car. Okay.
Okay, all right.
We got a man down.
Mike's had enough of that. Real quick, too, Scott. I know you were tripping on that name a little bit. Paul says it's pronounced Pepper Jenner. So,
solid inside joke. All right. Oh my goodness. One thing you're going to see with Canyon Ridge is that they all colored their hair. So you're going to see, don't adjust your screens tomorrow. Canyon Ridge is all colored their hair, but that's a team to kind of keep an eye on. They're going to open up with Ridgeview, which screwed up the entire bracket by winning District 3 because that was supposed to be Bishop Kelly. Ridgeview came into that district tournament the number 5 seed in the tournament. And then they ended up winning the whole thing, and it kind of flipped everything on its ear. But Ridgeview, 15-10, getting hot at the right time. They knocked off number 1 Middleton in the district tournament. They knocked off number 2 Bishop Kelly in the district tournament. And so this is a team that is getting hot at the right time. They also are pretty young, only 3 seniors. And, they're scoring 7 runs a game, and so they can score. They lost 4 games before hitting the district tournament. Then they just caught fire, And so, again, it goes right back to Gary's point. Who's hot at the right time? This Ridgeview team is smoking hot right now. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do against the arms of Canyon Ridge. And then you move into the next game between Bishop Kelly and Sandpoint. And Bishop Kelly finished the season number 2 ranked, coming in 19-5 record. They've got 2 losses to Middleton, a loss to Twin Falls, a loss to Valley View, and a loss to Ridgeview. And then pretty much everything is a win at that point. They lost to Ridgeview in the district tourney. This is a team that could be the most consistent next to Twin Falls. Well, obviously next to Twin Falls, is they have not lost 2 games in a row all season. So when they were losing their games, they were just dropping one here, 5 different times. They come in with a 354 batting average and 10 home runs. This team can swing it. And Carter Vandenberg, 459 average on the season. So, this is a team that can hit. They've got a couple of solid pitchers, Colin Dempsey, Parker Seahauer, and this team is good. This team is really good. And the thing that makes them unique is that they are aggressive. They will take an extra base on you. Singles turn into doubles. They will steal second. They will steal third. They don't stop around the base pass, which puts a lot of pressure on the defense and puts a lot of pressure on opposing pitchers. And so that is whoever plays Bishop Kelly is going to have to deal with that. And when you get to the state tournament, it's the little things that are going to make a difference. And Bishop Kelly, keep an eye on. They are good. But they're going to deal with Sandpoint, the 1-2A team, coming in with a record of 18-8. And it's always a mystery out of the North because they play in that combined 5A, 4A league. And this is a really consistent team. They did have a 4-game losing streak. They do have senior leadership, 7 seniors. But going back to that 4-game losing streak, they're playing Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston, and Post Falls. They're playing these teams. So when you look at this, it's like, well, they're losing to some pretty good teams. Sandpoint is scoring, and now keep this in mind. You put it all in context. They're seeing a lot of that 5A pitching, right? They're still scoring 9 runs a game. So this is a team that could put points on the board. And, the Post Falls, Lewiston, Coeur d'Alene that's in their conference, they're a combined 46-25 on the season, and so I think Sandpoint might be the dark horse, but for them, they get to open up against powerhouse Bishop Kelly. But that Sandpoint team might be somebody to watch.
Well, and what's crazy about that, Scott, is Sandpoint had to they lost in their regular season finale to Lakeland, a team that had like 2 or 3 wins all season, and because of that, they didn't even have the number 1 seeded districts. Moscow did, and so Sandpoint had to basically play Lakeland again in that play-in game, and that was a tight one, and they won essentially on a walk-off hit at the very end of the game. So they were this close to not even advancing out of districts, and now here they are, a chance to really make some noise.
And that's a really good point, too. Teams like that can just be happy that they're there, or they can recognize, man, we almost didn't make this. Let's make the most of this. So that's a really good point. You move into the nightcap now. You've got Twin Falls playing in their hometown, not their home field, but their hometown, coming in with the best record in the 4As, 20-6. They are the number 1 ranked team in 4A. They have head coach Tim Stottlemyre back. He was on a leave of absence. Now he is back, just like Mr. Safford here. And I think the over-under on whether or not we lose Mike again is 8 seconds. So I'm going to take the under.
I'll take the under.
And so Twin Falls, and they come in with a record of 20-6. They started the season 0-3, and so since then they have been the hottest and best team in baseball, 20-3 the rest of the way. They do have a loss to Canyon Ridge, who's also in the tournament, and a conference foe. They also have losses to 5A Rocky and 5A Mountain View as well. Those were not blowouts by any means. This is a solid team. And, a team like Twin Falls does well at state because they've got the three things that you need. They've got solid pitching, they have experience, and they know how to manufacture runs. This is a team that, if you follow Twin Falls over the years, they would win games at the state tournament 2-1, 3-2. I mean, they generally never got into those high-scoring games because they just had three solid arms. And you remember a guy by the name of Cy Sneed that threw for them a while ago. Ended up really doing well down in Texas. But, that's kind of been Twins' MO. This year, their bats are stronger. They're hitting the ball a whole lot better than I think in previous years. Maybe they don't have, those three top caliber pitchers, but they have enough pitching to get through a state tournament. So Twin, they got hot. They closed the season at 7-2, they closed the season well, 20-3, beg your pardon. So this is the number one team, and they'd have to be the favorite in the tournament. And everybody's going to be watching that semifinal game if Twin advances and if Bishop Kelly advances. Now, Twin's going to have to get by Bonneville, the last one I'll talk about. Bonneville 6A, the number one team out of District 6, finished with the record of 14-12. They were the third best record in the conference behind Blackfoot and Skyline, who are not here. So again, here come the upsets. And they play that best of three district style tournament as well. And number one Skyline, they opened up against number 4 Hillcrest and lost 2-1. So boom, they're out. Number 3 Bonneville upsets number 2 Blackfoot 2-1. Boom, done. And so in the championship game, it's the number 3 team against the number 4 team, and Bonneville advanced 2-0. And so they got hot. They closed at 7-2, but they're streaky. Bonneville is a streaky team. They started 0-3, then they won 3, then they lost 3, then they won 4, then they lost 4. That's how they've been all season long. Just incredibly streaky. They've got 4 seniors, pretty young, but it'll be really interesting to see kind of what they do, because I don't want to say anybody had an easy road through a district tournament, because those are not easy. But Bonneville, they upset Blackfoot, the number 2 team, and then they had the number 4 team, and then that was it. So I don't know where the challenge so much was, and that's going to be the talk of Bonneville. Did they get challenged enough coming down the stretch to step into a state tournament, especially when they have to open up against the number 1 team in Twin Falls?
Yeah, and I know Bonneville has at least a kid or two that was part of that American Legion team in Idaho Falls that won the entire American Legion World Series 2 summers ago. So they do have some experience there as well. All right, let's bring in Mike Safford. Mike, can you hear us all right?
I can hear you. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, because we've been struggling with this today. We've been struggling with this.
So
5A
here's
going to be interesting. Yeah. It's the so the 5A is going to be interesting from the standpoint that it's going to be the SIC against, at least in my mind, Idaho Falls. And you think about that Idaho Falls team, you were just talking about Bonneville, Scott, and the fact that it was Bonneville and Idaho Falls 2 years ago that played for the 4A state championship. Bonneville won that game by a score of 3-1. But as you mentioned, those 2 teams combined to play for the American Legion World Series championship and won that back in 2019. And that Idaho Falls team returns 3 of their 4 infielders from that 2019 team here in 2021. There were 3 sophomore starters that are back, and that's a team that has really played outstanding in Eastern Idaho. And it's going to be them, I think, against a great group of teams from the SIC. I mean, it starts with Timberline right now, a team that really has run roughshod. They've only lost 3 times all season. One of those was to Idaho Falls. They split with I Falls. Both of them were close ball games. A team that has outstanding pitching and has the top offense in all of 5A baseball. But you would think Timberline is a shoe-in to win it. No. You've got great other teams. Rocky Mountain has given them fits this season, although they got swept in the best 2 of 3 in the District 3 championships. Mountain View.
Oh. Well, Mountain View, I know was the number like 6 seeded districts, and yeah, that the District 3 bracket was kind of crazy too. There were some upsets along the way. As we've lost Mike for a moment, he's frozen in the sands of time.
Should have took the over.
Yeah, right. Everybody who took the over is a winner. All right. Okay, well, let's pop Mike off here and see if he can reconnect. Let's just kind of do this communally, guys. When we look at this 5A bracket, I got to be honest. I think Timberline might be one of the most disrespected teams all year in terms of the coaches poll. I along with Lorin and Paul, put together the coaches poll every single week, and I think only 2 or 3 times was Timberline the number 1 ranked team. Rocky Mountain, on reputation, and deservedly so, was the number 1 team for most of the season, despite the fact that Timberline had beaten Rocky. Even when Timberline had the head-to-head win over Rocky, Rocky was still ranked ahead of Timberline. And then I think Timberline showed that they are the top team when they swept Rocky in that best 2 of 3 series.
You look at their conference, their overall records, 21-3 for Timberline, 21-5 for Rocky, and you kind of talked about their head-to-heads a little bit, but run differential, they're almost identical. Timberline giving up about 1 run less over that amount of games. And so, yeah, those 2 teams, they've kind of been neck and neck. And like I said, Timberline, yeah, they kind of popped in and out of that number 1 spot. We're in the rankings most of the time, but yeah, they definitely could be that team to challenge the Idaho Falls, to challenge, that team up north as well. So,
Gary, what do you think about this 5A bracket? This is right in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's almost the 3A, the District 3, the one in Boise. That league is so tough because those schools are so big and they have so many athletes that I have a tendency to think if I was a betting man, I'd probably bet on the number 1 seed out of the Boise Valley. But once again, it doesn't mean they're going to win. But I'm sure Timberline has faced as much competition as any team in that tournament throughout. So Timberline and Rocky would be like the favorites for me just because of how tough the SIC is in the Boise Valley.
Yeah, and then you talk about up north, Coeur d'Alene was the number 3 seed at their districts, and they upset top-seeded Post Falls to earn their spot at state. So they're kind of a wild card as well. Maybe one of those teams that just happens to be playing good baseball at the right time. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. First of all, how exciting is it that we have state baseball a year after the spring calendar was completely wiped out? That alone is worth celebrating, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been everybody is just itching to go. I mean, you talk to any of these coaches, any of these players. I mean, it's all of them are acting like they are kids at Christmas right now because it's hard to think about it. It's been 2 years since we've done this.
Yeah.
One thing about my bracket, does the home field advantage matter? Because Fruitland's playing at home. How much is home field in baseball?
I think a lot, especially because the restrictions on how many fans can attend now has been scaled back. We're in phase 4 now of the reopening plan, which helps with fan attendance quite a bit. So, yeah, if a team is playing, or like Scott mentioned, Twin Falls and Canyon Ridge are playing right in their city. Lorin in Pocatello, I know, talking to Malad coach Bo Clark, he was pretty happy about being somewhat close because they usually are having to travel way, way, way far away. So those teams in Southeast Idaho got to be pretty excited about the 2A as well.
Yeah, I think comfort for Fruitland to be at home, and they're playing on their field, so it's an added level of comfort. Now, how big of a factor that is anybody's guess.
Yeah, and
go
ahead, Lauren. Go ahead.
I always enjoyed traveling to state tournaments. It was kind of a novel thing, but there's two sides of it. You travel, okay, you're all staying together, maybe away from some distractions, possibly at home, but there's plenty of other distractions when you're somewhere else and you're going to eat out and you're hanging out at a hotel as well. And so, both ways, it's really up to these coaches. Fields are fields. The dimensions are pretty much the same. You might have a little deeper outfield here and there, but the fields are fields, and you got to come out. You got to play fundamental defense, stay down on your ground balls, and hit the baseball. And so I think it's more up to the distractions, what teams stay focused on where they're at, what they're doing, and which teams kind of let the moment and the surroundings get to them a little bit.
Yeah, and with the home field where I'm at, the 1A in Orofino, Prairie, their coach Kyle Westhoff told me, of all the baseball and football titles that Prairie has won in its story history, none have been away from North Idaho. So that's going to be a key up there in Orofino at that 1A tournament. We'll give the last word to Paul Kingsbury. We were talking about that 5A tournament a little bit, and Gary, you said if you were a betting man, you'd bet on that top team from the Boise Valley. Since 2009, only one non-SIC team has won the 5A title, and that was Lake City in 2016. So there you go. The proof's in the pudding, I guess. So
yeah, the 5A SIC, they're tested. Those guys that make it to state are the real deal because they've got the toughest league in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're excited. Once again, IdahoSports.com will be bringing you every single pitch from all 5 state tournaments. The 5A tournament taking place at Boise, at Rocky Mountain High School in Meridian. That will be where Mike Safford is at. Hopefully Mike has a better time tomorrow than he did today, dropping in and out of the broadcast. That's for sure. Scott will be at the 4A tournament. That's going to be at the College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls. Gary, you'll be at the 3A tournament in Fruitland. Lorin will be at the 2A tournament in Pocatello. Those all start tomorrow. And then the 1A tournament up in Orofino gets started on Friday. It's going to be a great time. Guys, I'm fired up. I'm so fired up. I was mowing my grass earlier today, and I pulled the pull cord so hard that it came out. Look at that. That's how fired up I am for state baseball, guys. It's going to be a blast.
Well, let's put you in a uniform then, man. You could play.
That's right. That's right. And of course, Paul, every time I'm wrong about something, 5A's at Wolf Field in Caldwell. Rocky Mountain is the host school. So there you go. It's at the College of Idaho in Caldwell. So, all right. Thanks for doing this, guys. This has been a blast. Good luck with the calls starting tomorrow on IdahoSports.com. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brandon.
I knew I was setting you guys up for failure there.
All of us at once. Go.
Everybody was going to talk at the same time. Hey, big thanks to everybody who got on and commented today as well on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. If you weren't able to be with us live, we will have archive of this video. Chico State representing. I can't read what yours says, Lorin. It's pretty small.
Direct TV, man. I don't know. It's just I'm at work.
Tiger Nation, Jerome Tiger, Scott Burton. And so the video will be archived on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube if you didn't get a chance to be here live, or if you were so horrified by what you saw today. We will also have an audio-only version available wherever you download your podcasts. It'll be part of the IdahoSports.com podcast feed. So,
boy.
All right. Well, that'll do it. Thanks for tuning into this live state baseball preview on IdahoSports.com, and we'll see you later.